thank you for, yep, we want to thank you for joining us because we know that you could be doing anything else with the next 60 minutes, and the fact that you're here with us is not lost on us, and we really appreciate the time that you're taking to be here with us. So we're going to record these calls, and the reason why we're recording them is that we put these out on our podcast and social platforms, snippets of them, so that we can, or all in their entirety, so that we can spread the word about what we're doing. And we want to try to help as many people as possible to be playing tennis pain-free. And so us being a community is a part of that. If you're not comfortable sharing your likeness or your contribution, just feel free to put your question or your contribution into the chat, and we will do our best to make sure that we accommodate that and address that. Otherwise, we appreciate you participating and sharing yourselves with not only each other and us, but like the entire community. So I just wanted to start with that. And the other thing is, if you're going to participate, which we highly encourage, just please make sure that you're in a quiet and distraction-free place so you can do that, so that we can all get a clear signal and listen carefully to what you're saying is great. But if not, then just go ahead and pop it in the chat as well. So that's it, and I'm going to hand it over to Nick. Thank you for joining us again.
Yeah, thanks, Ruth. Yeah, so I think, and also I think we want this to be really fun and playful. I think there's plenty of us probably sitting in front of screens way too much, and the last thing we want is to be a boring Zoom interaction. So we're definitely gonna, be teaching a little bit and trying to give you guys some knowledge and tools and stuff. But really, we want this to be kind of interactive, and we want it to be fun, and we want it to be playful. And so we're actually going to start with a quick little icebreaker, and we're going to go around 30 seconds each, either favorite US Open tennis moment from this last tournament or why you love tennis. 30 seconds each. We'll keep it quick. We'll keep it brief. I will start. Ben Shelton, Frances Tiafoe, quarterfinal match. I just thought the energy was amazing, and to see those two guys make it that far was really cool. So that was kind of the highlight for me, to just watch that sort of different level of tennis being brought, especially American tennis that's been dormant for decades and more. So and then Coco Gauff winning. So I have two in there. That was pretty special. So I'll pass it to Ruth.
Yeah, and I think I'll go with the why I love tennis. So I recently, in the last 3 years, overcame a lot of injuries in order to trust my body more. And through tennis, not only am I developing a really nice, cohesive sense of community with the people in my community, where it's been pretty tough to do that over the last years, but also just I learned so much about myself and how to become a better person. And I can't believe that I'm learning all of that through chasing that little fuzzy ball around and trying to improve my backhand. And so I just really love the aspect of play and also growth, the personal growth that comes from participating in tennis. So maybe we go on a volunteer basis, or do you want us to just call on you?
Let's call them out, Ruth. You call, and then the next person calls the other person. I think that's easiest.
All right. Okay. How about Alex? I want to hear from Alex.
All right, great. Nice to be here.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody. Nice to be here. And I'm not in a totally distraction-free zone, so I'll just put my video off if I have to be distracted. And I'm going with the Coco Gauff turnaround moment. I turned it on just as she was turning around the match, and it was pretty amazing to see how she kind of stayed in and just showed up and stayed in all those points. Good to be.
I agree. That's great.
Stephanie, Alex, Steph and Alex, I'll pass it to you guys.
Oh, another Alex.
Yeah.
Oh, another
Alex. Two Alexes. Hi, everybody. My favorite moment from the US Open was the match between Alcaraz and Medvedev. I thought that it was just absolutely amazing, even though I really, really wanted Alcaraz to win because he's my favorite. Seeing how Medvedev played in that match was unbelievable. His backhand shot down the line was so inspiring. And I really enjoyed seeing the post-match interviews and hearing the players speak. I never really knew how cool Medvedev was until really the US Open and hearing him talk and then exploring him more. He's a really cool guy that supports a lot of other players. I love tennis.
My most memorable moment from the US Open, I think, was there was one highlight we watched of Alcaraz and Dan Evans, I think, and they had one point that was like, normally you might get like a 3 or 4, like, whoa, didn't think they were gonna get that, think they were gonna get that, but there was like 10 in that point, and I was just like mind blown how insane both of them were moving and covering the court.
So true.
Absolutely. Cool.
I love Dan Evans. He's hilarious.
Yeah. How about you, Amy?
There. So as far as the US Open, I've only recently gotten acquainted through this kind of new tennis community that I'm in. Who's playing? I don't really watch TV, but hearing them talk about it with such excitement. So I've actually more so watched some of like the YouTube reels, things a little bit comprehensive about what's going on. And really what I admire most about what I've just heard of some of them, giving their, I think Steffi had said this, their composure and when they're talking about going through the match in their mind. So, like with Coco Gauff, friend recently saw her in Atlanta playing. And so that's how I came to have an idea of her. Anyways, I watched her acceptance speech. And so to me that was really motivational. And I joined this particular, what I like about tennis, again, is like the camaraderie, but having recently gotten some injuries. So want to hear about how to prevent those, particularly tennis elbows.
Hi, Heather.
Awesome. Did we
How
lose
about
you
Maris?
for a second?
Yep, Maris, how about
I heard tennis elbow and then a cut, so right at the punchline, but we'll definitely get to that. Christian and Heather, I don't know if Christian, you're available to chat. If so, unmute yourself. Yeah, there you go.
Hey guys, yeah, sorry I can't be on camera. I like it when Novak hung up the phone. I thought that was awesome.
That was so funny.
But mostly I just love tennis for the people I meet and the mental growth that it provides. So cool stuff, guys.
Beautiful. Thanks for sharing that. Maurice, I'll pass it to you, and then Heather, you're on deck. And
Yeah,
Heather
so let me-
just joined us. We're just going around, Heather, and just sharing either a favorite US Open moment or why you love to play tennis. Maurice, go ahead.
Yes, why I love to play tennis. I'm going to answer that one. Well, because I love to play with the capital P with all my friends here, which I really love. I do spend a lot of time behind the screen. So getting outside, being on the court is just really, really nice and fun. And I'm turning 40, so I really hope to stay pain-free as long as possible. So I'm curious to hear more.
Everybody's turning 40.
Yeah.
Cool.
Nick, just for the record, I don't have like hosting, so I can't help with the back end admin stuff, just so you know.
Yeah, gotcha. Thanks. Hey, Heather, go for it.
Okay, my name's Heather, and I've been playing tennis for only about 1.5 years. So to me, it's another sport that I have under my belt. I love exercise. I love team sports. And I just love all types of exercise. So I'm actually over 50, pushing 50 and a half. So I would like to play as long as I can. And I love seeing all the different ages that can play tennis out there and stay fit.
Go, Heather.
Yes, agree with that. So, Con, you weren't here for the housekeeping part. If you want to share your beautiful face with us, we'd love to see it. And we're just sharing about favorite US Open moment or why you love playing tennis. And so if you can, if you want to unmute yourself and show us your face, you're not obligated, but it certainly helps us get to know each other.
Guys, I'm Con. I have a hard time to turn on my beautiful face. But So yeah, I enjoy tennis. It makes me feel stronger. I meet new people. And I see 2 people in here that I know of. So that's awesome. Currently, I don't really have foot issues, but I'm interested to hear this just in case it come up.
All right, cool. I think that's everybody. So awesome, guys. Thanks for being here. We'll just quickly introduce, I know about half the people in this room, so I will take about 20 or 30 seconds each. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Nick Holt. I am a personal trainer and also a health coach. I live here in Tamarindo, Costa Rica. I've been teaching on and off tennis for over 20 years. I primarily work with men and help them sort of move, feel, and look better. I also work with some kids here in person with the tennis academy here. And so, I think our value, Ruth and myself, is really not our expertise. We do have a lot of that, probably decades and decades of it, but it's really our sort of like struggles through our issues that we've been able to sort of solve. And I still have some back pain that I deal with, Achilles tendonitis, plantar fasciitis stuff that comes up. And it's we've been on our experiments and our journeys, and we're just really excited to share what we've learned. And I'll pass it to Ruth to give you a quick background on her.
Yeah. So I'm Ruth O'Donnell. I'm in the United States in Mobile, Alabama, and my background is in kinesiology, and I am a generalist. I have been in the human movement industry for over 30 years. And I was also a college intercollegiate basketball player, and I played all sports growing up. As a result of an ACL tear, multiple ankle sprains, as you can imagine, in basketball and volleyball and softball, eventually I think laid the fertile ground for an ACL tear, which I then had a reconstruction and a pretty failed rehab, I would say. So over the years, though I tried to stay active, I was always in pain. And so about 3 years ago, I found a company that I love and work for now called the Foot Collective. And I work as an internal part of the leadership team there, helping people from all over the world, including health professionals, learn about the role that our feet play as the foundation, and how the strength and the mobility and the resilience of our feet actually travel upstream in order to set the groundwork for what's happening up the kinetic chain. So I'm able to play tennis when probably if you asked me 3 years ago if I were to play competitive sports at all, I would have said no, I was giving up on that. So I'm really happy to be here and share.
Awesome.
Yeah. Thanks, Ruth. Yeah. So I want to just start. We're going to just go through a quick overview of what we're trying to do here. But I love this quote from George Bernard Shaw, and it's talking about play. And we don't stop playing because we grow old. We grow old because we stop playing. Right. And I think tennis is one of these things where there's so many of us that just love it so much, but we have nagging injuries, maybe issues that we haven't dealt with in the past that are sort of creeping up and don't allow us to play as much. And really that was kind of the genesis of this. And Ruth and I are in this beautiful community, as she mentioned, the Foot Collective. And there's, we've noticed in our tennis community, so many people want to be playing more, but they're limited by Achilles injuries or foot issues or knee issues or low back stuff. And so, we came together to sort of create this what's I think going to be a digital product and a service for people. And we're really just having this call to share our vision and also to get some feedback from you guys. Because I think one of the key pieces that we're trying to really create is this idea of a community, and that, Ruth and I certainly are experts in this world, but, we're all doing this together, and we all can share practices and tools and techniques and things that have worked for you, and we can build this like beautiful community together. So that's really what we're trying to do. And what I'm going to do is just go over maybe 5 to 15 minutes of some teaching stuff about the body, about the foot. I know people here have sort of come with specific issues. Plantar fasciitis seems to be the one that has popped up the most, tennis elbow probably right behind that. And so I'm just going to share for a few minutes, and Ruth and I will kind of go back and forth, just talking about what we've learned over our sort of decades of working in this space and learning about the body and how it relates specifically to tennis. So did I miss anything, Ruth, or is that?
No, I think that's it. And then just the rest of the format of the call will be some sharing, and we're going to solicit some feedback from you all as well. So if you have questions and stuff, we'll definitely include that into the format.
Cool. Yep. Okay. So to start, I think it's really important to just talk about a couple sort of core principles, that these core truths that we talk that are really important. And there's basically three of them. And the first two are pretty straightforward. And it's that the body is this incredible self-healing and self-organizing system, right? So if we come from this perspective that the body has this incredible intelligence, it's evolved over hundreds of thousands or millions of years. And a lot of times it's just kind of getting out of the way of the body's innate wisdom. And a lot of times that solves a lot of these issues that we have. And the third principle is this idea of what's called the SAID principle, which is really, really powerful. And that just means, in the scientific world, specific adaptations to impose demands, right? Another way to say that is that the body adapts very specifically to the demands that we place on it, right? So the outputs are directly tied to the inputs. Now, how this plays out practically, right? If you sit a lot in our modern environment, we're going to become really good sitters, right? So we're not going to develop the strength, the mobility, the capacity to get into certain positions, right? There's a beautiful book that I highly recommend. Ruth and I talk about this book all the time. It's called Move Your DNA by Katie Bowman, and we can email it to you or pop it in the chat here. And you see this across the animal kingdom too. She has this beautiful example in the book talking about orcas in the wild, and how when you have orcas that are in captivity, like in SeaWorld or other environments where they're not able to roam free, they actually lose their dorsal fin, like because they're used to traveling hundreds and hundreds of miles a day to forage and to eat. And when they're in captivity, they basically, their body no longer allocates resources to that fin, and they end up having this what's called floppy fin syndrome. And so it really is one of these principles of, like, if you don't use it, you lose it, right? That's the SAID principle. And we can apply this to really anything. So it's really powerful. Even something like plantar fasciitis, which can be quite complex, if we understand the body is self-healing, the body is self-organizing, it just adapts to the inputs that you give it. We understand that most of plantar fasciitis is just kind of an overload, overuse issue. So that tissue, the plantar fascia, which is the fascia connective tissue on the bottom of your foot, just gets overloaded. And so a lot of times that's because the foot isn't properly functioning. And we can't have a foot conversation without having a hip conversation. A lot of the times the hips aren't doing their job to stabilize the foot can't stabilize, and so the fascia just takes on a lot more stress and it gets overloaded. And that's what creates this plantar fasciitis. And itis just means like an inflammation of that tissue, right? So elbow tendonitis, tennis elbow, same thing. It's the inflammation of that tendon. Achilles tendonitis, same thing. It's the inflammation of that tissue. So again, really important. And I think if you take nothing else away from this call, just like the SAID principle, applying that to most everything is just a really powerful lens to look at the human body and to look at health and to look at pain. Anything you want to add to that, Ruth?
Yeah, I mean, I think like just referring to like specific examples in our lives, specific adaptations to impose demands can be as simple as like whatever, like Nick was saying, whatever you give your body, it will adapt and respond to. So even with when you think about like tennis elbow or any itis or angry tissue, not only is it overuse, but I find that sometimes we forget about like thinking about our whole body as one organism, one unit. And so we tend to compartmentalize every injury, right? And so if it's the elbow, we automatically think it's a problem with the elbow, and it is. But there's a real chance, like we were saying with the feet, if the feet, have all these this wonderful architecture to do the job to navigate us through the world and to support us in all of the demands that we place on it, the same holds true for the hands and the elbows. And if you're not moving your upper body in a way that's like supple, like if you're not dancing or moving your torso or rotating, you're not gonna be able to like dispel the forces through the kinetic chain. So anything that we talk about that has to do with inputs from the feet up also has to do from the top down as well. So anything at the bottom is that you give inputs up the chain, the same holds true for down the chain.
Yeah, but yeah, perfect, Ruth. And so like when we apply this to tennis, obviously our feet are what get us around the court, right? So we have to talk around proper, foot mechanics, and that leads into naturally leads into a sneaker conversation. And that's all the sort of, there's so much stuff just packed into foot mechanics, into sneakers. And so we're going to dive into all that when we eventually sort of develop out a platform and a community and a course. But the said principle is really, really important. And so as it relates to tennis, we have to understand that tennis, and really any sport for that matter, we're not really evolutionarily sort of designed to do a lot of these movements that tennis requires, right? To start and stop, to go lateral, to twist, to turn. And so to rotate the spine, to lift your arm over your head, to rotate the hips, all these positions that you need to get into in tennis. A lot of times people don't have that movement capability. And then what happens is certain tissues get overloaded, and it leads to pain and injury. So understanding what tennis requires as far as mobility of the spine, really good foot mechanics, good rotation through the hips, good shoulder range of motion, all these things, you can start to address certain issues in your body if you don't have those particular ranges of motion that could be causing your tennis elbow, your Achilles tendonitis, your plantar fasciitis. So a lot of times, like Ruth was saying, it's not necessarily where the pain is showing up. That's not necessarily the cause, right? So a lot of times, yes, you might have inflammation and damage to that that tendon on the elbow, and you need to probably address that and give it recovery and rest. But what's causing that might be your shoulder or wrist. A lot of times, if you look above and below the joint, generally you'll start to find sort of limitations that are occurring there that are putting extra stress on the joint that has the damage.
And I'll just add to that. One of the things that we talk about a lot in our work and in our play is that, Nick mentioned like the demands of tennis are pretty intense, right? So like we do have all these capabilities to rotate, move, and lift and twist, but I think where as tennis players we start to have issues is that we talk about earning the right to do those particular movements in our tennis matches. And as we go on, you'll see the kinds of shoes that I wear are called natural footwear. So I wear like toe pocket shoes with no arch support and very little cushion. And I'm learning to earn the right to move my body in certain ways on the tennis court. But if we haven't earned those positions off of the tennis court in our daily lives, then we're going to run into real problems when we start to play tennis. And that's where I think that's where fertile ground for injury, long-term injury in recreational tennis players, it's a little different. I think it ends up all being the same injury-wise on the tennis court, because whether you're a professional elite athlete or you're a recreational 3.0 player, it all tends to be the same, is that we haven't really earned that right. And then we might be overusing those mechanics or repetitively doing that motion without really recovering well, or earning the foundation from that in the beginning. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for adding that, Ruth. Because really pain, like if we talk about pain for a few minutes, pain is really a beautiful teacher. If you, it's a signal from the body. Now, and so, you know, I think Ruth and I would be on the same page. If you're in, you know, the common issue I get where people share is like, oh, I feel like I got hit by a car after I played tennis. And it's like, if your body is completely, you know, banged up after playing tennis, to Ruth's point, like you probably haven't earned the right to either play that much tennis or you're just overdoing it a little bit. And so pain is one of these things where it's a beautiful teacher. Unfortunately, in our culture, you know, pain is something that's avoided, and we take ibuprofen or we take drugs to mask the pain. But if you really think about pain, it's a signal from the body. And what normally starts as a little whisper, a subtle hint like, hey, you know, there's something going on the shoulder. If you ignore it, it generally will only get worse and start to scream at you. And then it could lead to something that's quite debilitating. So pain is something that we really need to lean into and start to almost, instead of try to ignore it and push it away, is to become more curious with it. I think that's a really good sort of way that we talk about it in our communities is what can you learn from pain? Why is that pain there? Because, you know, and this is quite controversial, or this is taking a real stance, because this is taking ownership of your health and your body, and we're not outsourcing that to a physio or a PT or a doctor who, you know, is just going to sort of fix and manage symptoms. So of course, I think there are moments where if you have an injury, it makes sense to go to a doctor, to an orthopedic, to a physio, to a PT. But my experience has been, and I'm sure Ruth can share her experience as well, so many of these issues is just about understanding why the pain's there and trying to experiment to understand why it's there and trying to do things to address some of those limitations that might be causing it, and not masking it. And I think, you know, there was a Netflix special, Breakpoint, and I'm sure many of you have seen it. There was the scene with Taylor Fritz. I think it was last year or 2 years ago at the Indian Wells tournament, and I think he was about to play Rafa in the finals, and he hurt his ankle, and he ended up getting like shot up with a bunch of drugs so he could play, and like he won, and he won a Masters 1000, I think probably biggest win of his career. But if we look at it from the lens of like health span and longevity of his ability to play tennis for 20, 30, 40 years, I would say he probably, you know, did a lot more damage than good in that situation. Now, if I was in that situation, I might make that same trade-off because he's worked his whole life to get to that point. But this is ultimately a conversation that you need to, or a decision you need to make. But I think it's powerful to understand, you know, there's trade-offs there. And when we take drugs, shots, ibuprofen, we're really masking that signal that our body is sending us.
Yeah, but pain is tricky and elusive, right? And I think in my experience, what I've noticed is that we tend to override because we want to be productive and we want to continue living our lives and continue with the responsibilities and the play and all the things. And the biggest thing I've noticed about pain is going slow, like taking a long-term mindset, which nobody wants to hear ever. But it really has been the most healing thing I've seen, not only in myself and other people. And that means like always going back to the most simple principles, first principles and the said principle, but first principles thinking, taking a long-term mindset and remembering that pain is, I mean, ultimately we are a nervous system sensing organisms that are, and our nervous system is designed to keep us out of pain. And for chronic pain, which is very interesting to me, not being afraid of it. Like Nick said, Nick used the phrase of like leaning into it, which we're not really that keen to do, but and we can't do that if the symptoms are suppressed and not, I mean, I think like with the exception of sleep, you know, trying to get a little bit of sleep so that the body can heal, there are not that many instances where pain medicine is actually, I think, recommended in my experience. And then with regards to Rafa and trade-offs, you know, like I think Nick said, we have to recognize what the trade-offs are. So if what we want to do is play tennis for many, many years and interact with our communities of intergenerational ages, and keep our tennis communities healthy and strong, addressing the pain is like a very important aspect of, I think, this teaching.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think on a very practical level, I think what we would advise and sort of a couple high level tips is to try to get, you know, specific and try to qualify the pain, because as Ruth was saying, it's very elusive. So just asking yourself questions like, okay, where exactly is the pain? Is it sharp or is it dull? You know, as a personal trainer and working with people in person, a lot of times someone might have discomfort from doing exercise, and they might feel this, you know, what if anybody's worked out or trained, you know, you might feel the discomfort of that muscle fatigue, and some people might think of that as a pain and they have to stop. That's very different, that sort of muscle fatigue versus like a sharp pain that's very specific in sort of a, you know, in the joint capsule or in the joint where bone meets bone. And if something refers down the body or up the body, that generally is something you want to pay attention to. Is it like, how consistent is it? Is it when you wake up in the morning? Is it all day? What's the intensity? Is it a 2 out of 10? Is it a 10 out of 10? What movements, activities sort of make it worse, and what movement activities sort of make it better? And I think when you can start to sort of analyze it a little bit better for yourself, you can start to sort of put some pieces together as far as what might the best next step might that be. And you know, and I think here is room for the physios and the PTs, and really what Ruth and I are trying to do here is guide people through a you know, a logical path of sort of solving sort of your own pain issues through these through a lot of these experiments that we'll be releasing. And so I think, yeah.
I just wanted to say one last thing. I didn't know if you were changing subjects, but before we go on, I'm going to say the thing that people don't really talk about with pain, and that is that, like, if you have had chronic pain and or an acute injury, there are emotional and aspects that come along with traumatizing the body a little bit. And so we don't really talk about this so much, about like how the body truly does keep the score of like the physical injury, but also like if you weren't in a really relaxed, easy state of mind when you had the injury and it was an emotional or a scary thing or a shocking thing, we can assess that as well on an ongoing basis. So in our work, we're big fans of like keeping notes and being our own, what we call citizen scientists, like taking notes and doing your experiments and paying attention. And it's not only physical, but like we're also feeling emotional. You know, we're more than just a body. We're a lot of other things, and the body stores that. So I think that it is worth noting about the emotional aspects too. Like, you know, like eventually I'll get to tell you about how I fell off my electric scooter, but it was shocking, you know, like it was really shocking. And I had a few tears because of that. And I realized like, I usually am so, I want to be tough. And so then I feel a lot better after I just let myself just kind of either journal about it or some kind of catharsis around the emotional aspects of injury and chronic pain, because it's frustrating and it makes you, there's a little grief involved in there about like not being able to do what you want to do. So I think it's worth paying attention to as well.
Yeah, thanks for adding that, Ruth. Yeah, I mean, I think pain is wildly complex and so many different variables. And the emotional piece is huge, 100%. So I want to talk a little bit about just the foot here for a few minutes, and then we're gonna open it up. But before we go to the foot, is all this making sense to you guys? Is there any specific questions on pain or SAID principle, or any specific things that come up? And you can just raise your hand or unmute yourself and chime in if so.
I wrote down the SAD principle. It's SAD. Is that correct?
SAID. So it's an acronym. Yeah.
I'll
SAID.
I'll put it in the chat.
Yeah. SAID. SAID. Thanks, Ruth. And it looks like Peter just joined us. So welcome, Peter. If you can participate and have your camera on, great. If not, no worries. We're just going over some high level stuff about what we're doing here. So, well, I think this is a good time, Ruth. Why don't you share your story about your scooter? Because I think the goal, one of the real high level goals of what we're trying to do is it's not about like avoiding injury, right? I think if we live our lives and we choose to play tennis and we choose to play sports and be active, we are putting ourselves at risk for getting hurt. And our goal is really for you to be more resilient, to be able to mitigate injury. I can just share quickly, and then I'm going to have Ruth share a story. But I was playing last week. I was actually playing against Alex, not my brother Alex, but other Alex there with Steffi. And I hit a serve, and there was a tennis ball on the court. And I was being kind of lazy. I saw the ball on the court, but I didn't really think much about it. Played the point, ended up, Alex hit a great lob. I went back to get it, and I stepped on the ball, and I jammed my big toe, and I had the sprained toe, kind of like turf, what's called a turf toe, just a sprained toe. But it could have been way worse, right? It could have been a complete ankle sprain. I could have tore ligaments. There could have been a lot more damage that happened. And that's just a quick example of, stuff's going to happen. But if your body has the capacity to be reflexive and to have the strength and stability to adapt to certain things, you're going to be much more robust. And it might just be a sprain versus something that's a lot more debilitating. And I'll let Ruth share her example of why it looks like she got in a scrap with a feisty cat.
Yes. So Amy DeHart, I played with Amy DeHart on Thursday night, and after I ride an electric scooter. My husband, my partner, and I, Matthew, have been car free for 15 years. And so I ride my scooter or walk or my bike to the tennis center. And on my way back, it was dark. And I love having my little headlight off sometimes because it's beautiful at night. And we ride past what I call the beautiful swamp, and it's in this park, and there's all sorts of beautiful wildlife and stuff. So, and we're in a city, but there's a lot of nature around. So I had my headlight off, and my husband Matthew was riding his scooter in front with his headlight on. And normally I watch his headlight, and I hit a pine cone, needless to say, and I flipped over the top of my scooter, and it was super. I mean, this is day 6, and I feel like $1 million. I can't even tell you compared to the night. Like, I thought I broke my nose. I thought I broke my teeth. I thought I had an injury to my elbow, maybe a fracture, but it was okay. And I mean, it sounds horrible when I tell the story, especially to my neighbors who are a little older, have high blood pressure, don't interact with the ground at all. They don't go up and down stairs. I may as well have, like, they would have shuttled me to the hospital immediately. I was definitely scared. And my whole point in telling you this is that I move and I do what I do in my life so I can feel better now and healthy and play now. And there is inherent risk in that. Now, it's not a great idea I'm not saying like that we should not try to avoid falls, but we live in a stay safe world, where like everybody, especially with people who are older and even younger people, we don't want to fall. And I'm not saying that we should fall all the time, but what I am saying is that we do well by interact with the ground more. So we do experiments in ground living. I'm a little bit on the extreme end of the spectrum. I don't even own a couch. We have a ping pong table in my dining room and instruments, and
I love that. So cool.
We don't own any furniture. We got rid of the last of our furniture. And so what that means is that I don't own a gym membership because I get up and down off the ground regularly. I'm always moving in ways that help my body to be stronger, so that maybe for somebody else that fall would have been catastrophic. I hit my head really hard, and but the way I fell was really great because of how comfortable I am with moving and falling on the ground. So yeah, so I guess my whole point in talking about this is that, like, part of what we do is not only, like, we talk about feet, we talk about the amount of time we spend sitting in chairs and how little and how much we're going away from interacting regularly with the ground beneath us in order to get to know it better. And then when we do take risks, which are inherent in living a good lively life, the injuries aren't as they will be there. I think, like, that's one of the biggest lessons I've learned, is that, like, I never wanted to get injured again. I was tired of being injured, and I still get injured, but it's not as bad, and I know how to care for myself. And sometimes it is catastrophic, and that is life. So I know that doesn't sound optimistic, but it's just, how are we going to live now, and how well can we move our bodies and stay strong within the framework of what we're trying to do every day.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks for sharing that, Ruth. Yeah, it's just about being more resilient. And I think in not having these things that are going to inevitably happen be a lot more of a big deal and sideline you for months and months versus maybe a week. And I think if we have the long-term perspective, we can sort of do things every day to sort of, mitigate these injuries versus, prevent them. And that's really our goal. So I know I want to stay true to the time at the top of the hour, and I want to get a little bit of feedback from people, and I'll just share, just quickly for about a minute on the foot, because I think the foot is one of these things where it's really neglected. And as it relates to tennis, I think the biggest thing that you can do as a tennis player to take care of your feet is wear a more natural shoe. And it doesn't have to be, you can still wear a tennis sneaker, which we'll get into on maybe our next call on what a natural shoe is versus an unnatural shoe. But just having something that's more toe shaped, so it's the shape of the toes versus getting pointier at the nose, something that's flat, something that's flexible, and something that you can feel the ground. And those are the 4 F's that we talk about in our community. And we'll talk more at length about what to look for in a shoe. But just the foot is has 26 bones, it has 33 joints, it's made to move. And when we stuff our feet into shoes that are really rigid and stiff and that are up on a ramp and that squeeze our toes together, it really can do not only a lot of damage to the foot, but it has knock-on effects to all the way up the chain. So Ruth put that in the chat. So I appreciate that, Ruth. We'll be diving more into the foot as we go along, as we build out these products and programs. But just the more time you can spend in a natural shoe or spending a little bit of time barefoot is really gonna provide some huge dividends to your body. And you're essentially, you're giving your body the inputs, like we talked about in the SAID principle. So with that, I know a few people had to drop off at 15:15, but I think we're going to open it up now and share a little bit, unless there's anything else, Ruth, that you want to hit on.
No, are you gonna give the prompts for the questions?
Yeah, I am. So we'd really love to hear from you guys, and this was kind of the whole idea of this call is to, and you can keep it to about a minute or a minute and a half. So if you can be pretty economical with your words, so everybody can have a chance to share. But basically it's like, what are you dealing with now, as far as pain wise, and what have you been trying to do to deal with it? And then the third, so that's kind of part 1, part A and B. And the second question is, what would you like? What would get you really excited to show up for in terms of a digital product, a program? Would it be something in person? Would it be group together? Would it be one-on-one? what would get you really sort of excited to, what would, like, your dream sort of course, and what would that look like to you?
Yeah, like what would make you excited to participate in a community like this? What would you need from it?
Sweet. And then I will, yeah, Steffi, you can jump in if you want.
I was experiencing pain in my knees when I was playing tennis and doing all activities, even sometimes walking. And for the last 8 days, I've been really strict about incorporating 15 to 30 minutes of weight training a day, like into like my my routine. And I've noticed a huge difference in how my knee is feeling. And I really think that by strengthening my muscles, it's taken away from putting so much pressure and everything into my knee. So I've noticed a huge difference from that. I think it would be really beneficial for a program if it was something that we could participate online, like if it was filmed or recorded, and then we could sign up for it and then participate it with a schedule that works for us. We do a lot of online classes, and I think that would be really awesome. You guys have a lot of great information. Thank you so much for this class today.
Cool. Thanks, Steph.
I actually had plantar fasciitis not too long ago. I mean, I didn't really even know what that was until one of our tennis students said that, and then I looked it up and I was like, oh man, I think that's what I have too, because I just had a pretty sharp pain, especially in the mornings when I woke up after playing tennis the day before. And I did like the foot rolling and a lot of things for like a week and a half, 2 weeks, and didn't really see any huge differences. But then I actually got acupuncture, and she added the electric to them. And literally after I got acupuncture, it's been so much better since then. So, and really, I was surprised that I only had to go one time and that I felt a noticeable difference after that. So I don't know, whatever she did, it really worked. But in terms of what I think would be beneficial as a course is online videos. We're very visual, and seeing like a sequence of like, oh, you have a foot issue, here's a couple of videos on what you can do to help that specific issue, or shoulder issue. Video series to me is worth a lot. I think being able like a YouTube video that you can just use as a resource, that those are always super beneficial to me.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks, Alex. Thanks, guys.
I can jump in as well. Yeah. So I a couple months ago started to have pain in my wrist, which was really new for me, and it was because I was focusing a lot on the top spin and playing way more than ever before, like 2-3 times a week. So just this movement all the time, quite intensively. I think it just overdid it a little bit. So my way of responding was basically just pull back a little bit in the intensity and the frequency, and just being a little more gentle about it, but also really mindful, because like you mentioned with emotions, or how we react also with our thoughts, I think it all works together. So I was sort of just trying to not keep it too stiff, but also not overdo it with mobility. A friend told me like, well, I just sort of warm up my wrists before, rather than trying to not move it and put it in something like that would hold it straight. So sort of, trying out these different things, and actually moving it just sort of helped me warm up, I think, the wrist, and then play a little bit more mindful and a little bit less. I also sometimes have on and off pain in my knees. And then again, it's very much often for me, depends on how my posture is. Whether I'm mindful about how I'm walking around. And I think also when my shoes start to be too old, I know I need to change them. So for me, and of course, really tennis related, what I tend to do with tennis, I just go meet my friends and boom, we play tennis. And then when I'm done, I'm like, okay, and I jump in the car and it's done. And I don't stretch or warm up or don't have a little routine. So that could be really helpful. I always see on the beach, people when they go surfing, they do a little, some movements that are helpful for surfing. Or when I played hockey on the field at a high level, we always had a little routine before and after. I'm like, why don't we do that with tennis? It's quite weird because it's really quite intense, you just go full in. Other than that, I don't have specific ideas. I like the one that Alex just mentioned. I think that's a really nice idea.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, great. Yeah, warm-ups, cool downs, especially as we get older, so vital. And I'm, I don't 100% always do them because it's not fun or it's not exciting, but it is for sure a vital piece of the longevity equation. So awesome. Amy, and then I'll go to you, Heather, after that.
So on the court, running in my feet doesn't bother me at all. But since maybe I'm over 50, when I get up in the mornings, they're rather painful and super stiff. And the only thing I could think of is, well, maybe tennis and the frequency that I play, something's going on where it'll wear off fairly soon, half an hour or so. But I just think it's related. So maybe I need to incorporate more stretches, things that even when I'm like laying down, rest myself a little bit better, and then maybe be a little slower to wake up and move. I kind of instantly go for the slippers just because they're softer than being on the hardwood floor. I think that for me, incorporating probably more barefoot walking can help. And what I really deal with more so, my video cut off earlier, so I'm not sure if you heard tennis elbow. And what I noticed, this kind of ties in with Mary's like maybe mindfulness in our thoughts, is that when I'm practicing serves by myself, I notice that's when I hurt the most. So learning to play in a better way, I don't really with partners hurt myself as much as by myself. So I think it's a mental thing that I'm doing and over killing the ball. So techniques, and then I think like videos and stretching. I've looked this up before, but I'm not diligent about doing all the stretches on my own off the court. I typically do it before being on the court.
Great feedback. Thank you. Maybe Heather and then Con.
Yep.
Okay, sure. I have a unique situation where I actually have an autoimmune disease where my body produces way too much collagen. And so my muscles get super sore anyway. I'm like constantly stiff. So keeping, busy and active is huge for me. But, so I have to deal with pain every day and have for probably 20 years. And so you kind of get, like you said, your body adjusts. Your body also adjusts to pain when it's chronic. So, so I have a different level of pain when I get an injury. Like, when I was over the summer playing tennis more than usual, and we don't usually serve a lot when we're playing tennis in the groups I play with here. And I was playing Alta, which is in Atlanta, major serious, tennis league, with some of them. And we played full set matches, the whole deal. And I served for like an hour straight, every day for 3 days a week for a month. And after not ever having done that, my shoulder's done. Like I killed it. So, and it hasn't gone away, and it's been a month. And I did a month of no tennis. I did a month of stretching. I'm like Alex, I go get dry needling with the electrodes. I get, the TENS units on it. I get, as much massage as I can. So what I think would be helpful is strengthening for those specific movements in tennis. Because, I know when I used to do softball, and when you go to physical therapy, they teach you the strengthening so you can help make those joints, sorry, there's a wasp, joints better and healthier so that you can do those repetitive actions and not injure yourself so much.
Yeah, that's great. I agree with that one too.
Con?
So I'm very fortunate that tennis haven't caused any issues to me. However, I keep an eye out because I hear left and right, elbow, knee, foot, So this is just really good for me to listen to everybody's information. That will help me out in the future.
Wonderful. can I just propose before anybody else maybe hangs up, before we have to wrap it up, that before we meet for our next call, if you plan on attending with us, I'd really love it if you could do a chair audit or a sitting audit. And what that means is that the experiment is for, if you can, 3 days, if not 7 days, track how many hours a day you sit in a chair. And that can be driving, at a dinner table, at a desk, in the 90-degree position with your hips flexed at 90 degrees, like calculate that and track how many hours you sit daily for 3 to 7 days. And then come prepared to share that with us on the next call if you're going to join us.
That would be interesting to see.
Dropping the hammer, Ruth. Dropping the hammer. I love it.
The reason the reason why is well, we're going to talk a lot about like what the impacts of sitting over time, but on average, Americans sit 9 to 13 hours a day in that position.
Wow.
Specific adaptations to impose demands mean that the hip flexors get short and tight, and that your glutes, that's a whole thing, right? So it's a really important audit. So it'd be just for your own curiosity, and then for ours, do that sitting audit. Go ahead, Nick, sorry. I didn't want to forget.
Awesome. That's awesome. I love it. I love it. Because I think that the knock-on effects are so dramatic, especially as what it does to the foot if the hips aren't able to stabilize the foot. Because the main role of a lot of the hip muscles are to stabilize the foot. And if you can't stabilize the foot with the hips, stuff happens, bad stuff happens. And so a chair audit is a beautiful place to start, and not like from a judgmental place. I think it's more about, you know, just what is, because I think the reality is a lot of us have optional chair sitting that we all have to do. I don't know a restaurant or a car where you can drive and not sit down, right? So like, it's more about the optional chair sitting on the couches, and you can, pull a room.
Don't underestimate the chair sitting on the upper body, shoulders, elbows, wrists too, which we'll talk more about over time.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, guys. Well, this is awesome. Thank you for taking an hour out of your day and showing up. And yeah, we'll be in touch. We'll probably do this again. I think we'll do this maybe a couple weeks. We'll have another conversation. We'll bring into the space some teaching, some learning, and the goal is really in a few months we're going to be releasing some short little sort of courses, products that you guys can participate in, and so this is really for you to get to know us and for us to share a little bit about what we're doing. So thank you so much for being here, taking time out today. We really appreciate it.
And in closing, just thank you too, because we Nick and I are always together nerding out on this kind of stuff online, and it really is important to us to build community, because there's so many different voices with so many different experiences and backgrounds. So we really hope to not only deliver good courses that can help people navigate their tennis lives, but also really building a robust community around this. So that's a real strong intention of ours as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.